Just getting everything set up. Be with you in a minute. Okay, well, I think I'm just about ready. We're technically 6-7 minutes away from start time, but it looks like we got folks showing up early. I like you folks. You get to the movie theater, you get to the train station, get there ahead of time. Get in line early. Get in line to vote early. There you go. Anybody vote yet? Oh, we're in for fun, aren't we? Well, we'll officially start at 7:30, but there's no reason why we can't chit chat already. Let's smoke. What's cooking out there, folks? Oh, Ryan Lloyd's doing beef ribs this weekend for the first time. Yeah, I've got a good article on them. Now beware, there's a difference between beef back ribs and beef short ribs or side ribs or plate ribs. The ones that everybody is drooling over nowadays are the so-called dinosaur ribs. The big fat ones from that you see in a lot of the Texas joints. And they run about 2 inches thick. They come in slabs, 4 bones wide typically, and they 2 of them have a lot of meat on them. The other 2 not quite so much, but they're still really good. And basically, you just cook them like you would a brisket. Sean Durant, how long does it take to smoke a brisket? How long does it take to get to Chicago? Well, what temperature are you cooking at? How thick is the meat? What are you cooking with? Gas, charcoal, logs? A lot of variables there. Brisket is like the one of the hardest things to cook. If you're just getting into grilling or smoking, do a pork butt. Pork butt is forgiving. It's pretty hard to mess up. Brisket, really easy to mess up, and it starts with, what did you buy? You got to get a good quality brisket. You got to get USDA choice or higher. So we can talk about brisket a little later. But if you really want to know what the deal on brisket is, go to AmazingRibs.com. In the little search box, type Texas brisket, and you will find a pretty thorough discussion of the variables and the issues. Are you cooking with the point on or the point off? Tammy Joy Bell Beckwith is with us. Hi, sweetie, she says, and hi, sweetie, back at you. Tammy and I first met, I don't know, when I first started hanging out on Facebook 100 years ago. Talk about a faithful fan friend. I always do a little heart flip when I see your name, Tammy. Thank you for coming. Okay. So, well, I thought what I would do, and we'll start a formal crank up in 3 minutes here, but we're going to talk first about barbecue sauces. And different kinds and how to use them. And the usual format of these little fireside chats is I start off with about 10 minutes or so of just a general discussion on a favorite topic, and try to do a little light education, and then we can talk about the topic or whatever else is on your mind. And no, Kevin Holmes. Oh, Kevin Holmes Adele, a regular. Kevin, aren't you the guy who always asks me about the drawer? Man, I gotta open a drawer back here. Aren't you the one who always asks me why is the drawer open? I think that was you. No, it's not a Riesling. This is Gustav Lorenz's Gewürztraminer. I usually keep their Gewürz and their Pinot Blanc on hand. They're from Alsace in France, along the German border. Really lovely wines. Lorenz is a really good producer. I don't know if you guys know, but I had a life prior to barbecue. I was the wine critic for the Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune, and I owned and published a magazine about wine. So I was a wino before I got into, back in, I guess, I sold the magazine in the year 2000, and I switched to solid food, barbecue being a love from many, many years, and I went from liquid food to solid food, and the rest is history, I guess. But I'm still a wino. You know what the difference between a wino and a connoisseur is, don't you? $10 a bottle. That's the jokes, folks. Somebody was asking me for jokes here. I saw the questions. Okay, Josh Harrison. My brisket came out with no smoke ring. Does it matter? No, smoke ring has no flavor. I tell you what, we're just getting ready to get started. I'll do my little chat on, and ask me again a little bit later about the smoke ring, because it's a really interesting story. As long as it tastes good, we don't need a smoke ring. But there's a reason why it may not have had a smoke ring, and we can talk about that too. So I guess there's several questions on brisket floating around out here. Okay. Oh, Ryan Lloyd says he's the drawer guy. I'm sorry if I, Kevin, if I accused you falsely. Okay, Teague Hosty. He rested his brisket for 3.5 hours in the cooler. Yeah, that's a good move. I call it holding rather than resting. We'll talk about that too. Well, it is, I think. Oh no, we're 30 seconds away from 7:30. I'm trying to run this train on schedule here. So if people show up on time, we haven't left them waiting at the station. So we'll get started in just about 30 seconds here. Yes, Kevin, the spicy traminer. I love them. We had some smoked sausage tonight, and I cranked up the Gewürz. On the Alsace border, in the German border of France, sausages and smoked sausages are really popular, and so Gewürztraminer and smoked sausage just seemed like a natural thing. Okay, well, it's officially 70. Let me try my fancy intro video. Here we go.
I need ribs to ease my day. I need to find time to cook them right. My papa said, can't hurry ribs. No, you just have to wait. He said ribs.
And now, at your service, here to help you cook and eat like royalty is the barbecue whisperer and hedonism evangelist from AmazingRibs.com, the planet's biggest and baddest barbecue and grilling website, Meathead.
How about that, huh? Fancy intro. Was the audio audible? I don't, I'm still learning this snazzy technology stuff here. Let me know if you could hear that the song. I actually wrote the song "Can't Hurry Ribs," and my niece, who's got a beautiful voice, is the singer. So could you hear it? Somebody. Yeah, you heard it. Great. Okay. Loud and clear. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Well, okay, I thought I would kick things off tonight with a little, few thoughts on barbecue sauces. And then we'll ramp up on whatever's on your mind. And several of you are already chiming in with brisket questions, so maybe we'll veer into brisket right after barbecue sauce. I won't take too long on that, but I like to take a subject and kind of wrestle it to the ground at the start of this session. When we think of barbecue sauce, we typically think of something thick and red and sweet, and that has become the popular barbecue sauce of America. And technically, we call that the Kansas City barbecue sauce style. It somehow evolved, most specifically in Kansas City. Kansas City barbecue sauce didn't start out that way, but the Kansas City style kind of evolved to that rich, sweet with molasses. Almost all of them, almost all commercial ones, have liquid smoke added to it, and that's a major part of the flavor profile. They're not hard to make. They're pretty much based on ketchup or tomato paste. And then there's vinegar and spices and sweeteners. I've got a couple of recipes. I've got what I call Kansas City Classic, which is sort of my takeoff on Kansas City Masterpiece or KC Masterpiece on AmazingRibs.com. It's a pretty good recipe. I just have been playing lately with one that has a raspberry based. I haven't published it yet, but it'll be in my next book. And actually, I did. I put it in our Pitmaster Club. But there's a bourbon one on AmazingRibs.com. But that's your classic Kansas City style. What a lot of people don't realize is there are some other styles that are legitimate and they're sort of regional. For example, most notable, I think, is you get into central South Carolina, starting around Columbia, which is where University of South Carolina is, and running down to the coast. The Germans came in and populated that area, and Germans love their pork, and they often serve it with mustard. And so down there in South Carolina, barbecue sauce is often yellow, and a little sweet, like in Kansas City, but it's got herbs often, and maybe some vinegar. Variety of styles. There's a lot of people who make it well down there. The Bessingers, there's 2 or 3 Bessinger family members out there making barbecue sauce. Those that I've tasted are all good. I call it Carolina Gold, and I've got a very nice Carolina Gold recipe on the website. They're very good on ribs, but it just looks funny. They get kind of brown and muddy and not terribly appetizing. They don't look as cool as those really shiny red sauces, but they're really good on pulled pork sandwiches where you don't really see the sauce. It's under the bun, and it's really good on pulled pork sandwiches. In fact, it's my favorite barbecue sauce for pulled pork sandwiches, so you might want to check out a recipe for South Carolina or Columbia Gold, a mustard-based barbecue sauce. Now, if you move around the Carolinas into Georgia, the sauces tend to be very vinegary, especially North Carolina. They tend to be vinegary based. Half of the North Carolina towards the coast, mostly vinegar and black pepper and hot pepper and little salt, and that's it. Now, 1 or 2 of them throw something like apple juice in there, and I really love that style, and I've got a recipe for that on AmazingRibs.com also. The beauty of the vinegar-based sauces is that the acidity really cuts through the fat. So you take a bite of, oh gosh, my wife and I, we just had some ribs this week, spare ribs. And spare ribs, as you probably know, are the side ribs, not the back ribs. And they wrap around the chest of the animal, and they include the rib tips. And the rib tips are really fatty. And these were incredibly fatty, some of the fattiest ribs I've ever eaten. And a Carolina vinegar sauce really cuts the fat. You take a bite of these, and the fat coats your mouth, covers all your taste buds, and you can barely taste them. Taste the food. So you take a bite of something with vinegar sauce on it, and it cleanses the palate. It's like drinking a really dry, tart white wine. It cleans the palate and gets you ready for your next bite. So that's really nice down there in eastern North Carolina. There are parts of North Carolina where they mix a little tomato paste or tomato sauce in there, and it's a little reddish, but the vinegar dominates. Also down into parts of Georgia, vinegar is the dominant component all around, and even in South Carolina, wrapping around the mustard area. So they're fun to try. It's very different, and they can be very tart, and not everybody likes them, but it's really good with fatty ribs, really good with fatty pulled pork, fun to eat. You get into Texas. Now, nowadays, most Texas sauces really kind of are variations on the Kansas City style, but not originally. Originally, Texas sauces were kind of like a Texas soup. I mean, a tomato soup. They were very thin, and they had a lot of bell peppers in them, a lot of cumin, and because they were thin, not thick, they could penetrate into the meat. They could soak into the meat a little bit, and they weren't really powerful. They weren't really very sweet, and you can still get them in a few places. Oh gosh, what's the name of the famous place in Llano? I'm drawing a blank here. Old man memory. I had wonderful meat there. In Llano or Llano. I think the Texans pronounce it Llano, and the Tex-Mexes pronounce it Llano. It'll come to me. But they actually dunk the meat into this tomato, and so what happens is the fats and the drippings get into it. No, it's not Snows, John, in Llano. God damn it, I'll think of it. And they just dunk it in there, and it's really thin. And that's your old style Texas, and I have a recipe for that also. And it really doesn't mask the meat much. You know, in Texas, rubs are not all that. Well, all right. Old style Texas, new style Texas. New style Texas is changing. You know, you go anywhere in this country, come here to Chicago, or I was in D.C. not too long ago, and often they will offer you a range of styles. You can get Texas style, you can get North Carolina style, Eastern, Western, Southern, but historically, Texas has its styles, and rubs weren't a big deal in Texas. Texas meats were just salt and pepper. You know, let the meat speak for itself. You don't need no stinking rub on there, you know, and you don't need strong sauce. Cooper's. Thank you, Bill Paulson. It's Cooper's. Oh, God, how could I? Cooper's one of the great barbecue joints in America. Yeah, okay, I have several of you chiming in now with Cooper's. Kevin Reed, thank you. Yeah, Cooper's really cool place. Out in the middle of nowhere. Llano is just in the middle of nowhere. When I was there, a couple of guys drove up, and they were in the Cooper's minivan. And I was talking to them, and they said, oh, yeah, we flew in from Austin. There's a little small airstrip here, just one runway. And Cooper's leaves the van there with the keys in it. So you can fly in from Austin for lunch, park your plane, your Cessna, hop in the Cooper's van, the keys are right there, drive to the restaurant, have lunch, and fly out. That is so Texas. I was at another restaurant out there, I forget where it was, out in West Texas, and while I'm eating lunch there, a helicopter came in and landed in the backyard. Guys piled out in really fancy pinstripe suits, had lunch, wiped their mouths, got back on the helicopter, went back to wherever they came from. That's so Texas. Okay. Alabama, in Decatur, Alabama, Big Bob Gibson had a famous place there, and it's still there, and it's famous for its white sauce. They have a sauce that's kind of like the salad dressing. Oh, here I go again. Boy, my memory is not great tonight. But it's a mayonnaise and sour cream base, and it's very thin, and they dunk the meat in it, and it's usually chicken, and the chicken dunked in it is really popular there, and you don't see it much outside of northern Alabama. Decatur's where it started. A bunch of restaurants in that area have imitated it, but it really works on chicken, and it's a lot of fun. Also, I have a recipe for that. Let's see where else. Well, I mean, if you get down into Florida, you have to consider smoked fish barbecue. Smoked mullet, in particular, is the signature dish of Florida. Mullet is a vegetarian fish. It doesn't bite on shrimp or other bait. You can occasionally catch it on corn, but usually it's netted. And it's not one of the great tasting fishes on its own, but it's butterflied, gutted and butterflied, and smoked. Sam Peters in St. Petersburg is famous for it. A bunch of places serve smoked mullet, and it's heavily spiced and seasoned and smoked, and it can be served with the classic fish sauce. Great Scott! Somebody reminded me. Yes, ranch it's sort of the Alabama sauce is a sort of like ranch. In Florida, it's sort of a tartar sauce that is popular. So, what else? Well, people talk about a Memphis-style sauce, but I don't think there really is a Memphis-style sauce. Most of the sauces in Memphis are kind of red and thick, and maybe not as thick as Kansas City, but they're Kansas City style. But what Memphis is famous for is dry rub, and you'll find a lot of restaurants there where the ribs have been heavily seasoned with rub when they're smoked, and then they'll come out and they'll hit them again with another layer of rub. I'm not a huge fan of that style because when you season them with raw spices at the end, they taste like raw spices. Now, if you season them with spices and then cook them, then the spices get melded in with the juices and the fat, and the sugars caramelize, and the flavors change with the heat. I like that a lot. So dry rub from Memphis is kind of popular, and there are a number of restaurants when you go in there and order ribs, they'll ask you if you want them wet or dry. And wet, of course, is having a sauce on it, and dry is just a rub. For me, it's dry rub, but not after the cook. Just rub it up before you cook it, and then cook it with the rub, and then serve it that way. And I do that at home. You got to be awfully good at your meat. You can't overcook the meat. You can't ruin the meat, because the meat really stands out. You don't have sauce to cover it over. Another really popular style that's not so much regional are glazes and fruit-based sauces. Glazes tend to be heavy on things like corn syrup or honey or maple syrup, and they're really shiny, really sweet. And I've been doing something lately that you guys might want to try. I have a recipe for this on the website. I call it Vermont, but it's not necessarily Vermont-based, but it's got maple syrup in it, so I call it Vermont. But it really works nicely. I'll put a slab of ribs. I rub up a slab of ribs, put my Meathead's Memphis dust on it, throw the ribs on the smoker, 3-4 hours at 225, and then when they've got some nice color, they're not done cooking yet, you wrap them in aluminum foil. And before you seal it off, You can drizzle a little maple syrup on it, or honey if you wish. Some people like to use agave, but I use maple syrup and a little apple juice, and maybe a little extra of my Memphis dust. And then you seal it up really good so that it sort of braises in there. You put the meat side down, the bone side up, and pop it back in there for about an hour. Now, I know there's a technique out there that a lot of people talk about called 3-2-1. You cook it 3 hours in the smoke, 2 hours in the wrapped up foil, and 1 hour outside. 2 hours in the foil is way too much for me. The meat gets really mushy. I don't think that's a really good technique. And I don't know too many really good pit masters who do 3-2-1. 3-1-1 or 3-1-2 or 4-1-2. 1 hour in the foil is, I think, a better target. But what happens is juices come out and fat renders out. And so you can now, after about an hour or so, take the meat out, and it's gotten quite tender because of the humid. If you seal it up tight, it's really moist in there. It's really humid in there. And then you pop them out, and you can throw them back in the smoker to just dry off the surface and form a little bark. But what's in that foil is good. Now, if you haven't oversalted the meat, I'll take that and I'll pour it into a saucepan and add just a little more maple syrup, maybe a little Kansas City style barbecue sauce, a little sweet red barbecue sauce, and simmer it. Maybe reduce it down, make it thick, but it turns into a glaze. And when you taste it, it has a lot of meaty flavor. It has the flavor of the ribs and the rub and fat from the meat in there. And paint that on, and it gets really shiny. And it's not really goopy, sticky, sweet like a lot of Kansas City sauces can be. It's still sweet and it's still rich, but it has a meaty richness, and I really like that. And my wife has turned into a fan of that technique as well. So that's something to think about. What else? There isn't really a Chicago-style sauce, but there is Chicago-style barbecue. It's often rib tips and sausage. We've covered the Carolinas, Kansas City. I think we've covered most of the key sauces. So that's kind of a look. If you haven't experimented with them, on AmazingRibs.com I have recipes for all of these sauces. Or I actually have links to companies that make good examples of them. So you could order a bottle or two of, if you don't want to make a batch of mustard sauce, I've got links to a company that makes a really good, and they're all from that region. There's a Kansas City sauce from Kansas City. There's a Carolina mustard sauce from South Carolina, from Columbia. And there's an East Carolina and a West Carolina, North Carolina sauces. So you can try these different sauces. And I think I have the Cooper sauce on there also. So you can order them and try them out. And they're fun. They really work nicely. So that's my kind of overview from 30,000 feet on sauces. And I thought this is a good time to take on some of your questions, and if you've got questions about sauces, we did have we got somebody from Vermont. Well, if you're from Vermont and you like your maple syrup, do try that technique. It's on the recipe's on AmazingRibs.com. I think it's called Vermont ribs. Yeah, Eric Carlson says don't wrap if you want bark, and I agree. All right, bark is what happens when the meat dries out on the surface. It's a dehydration process. Essentially, the surface of the meat turns to jerky. It's drying out from the dry air in the smoker. So if you wrap it in foil, it's in moisture. So it kills the bark, most of it. If you take it out of the foil and pop it back in the smoker, you'll get some bark back. But if you wrap in foil, it's called the Texas crutch. You do lose the crunchiness of the bark. And if you really like a good crisp crunchy bark, then don't wrap in foil. The advantage of wrapping in foil is it does tenderize. It makes the meat more soft, more tender. So it's a trade-off. You decide which you prefer. Yeah, T. Hosty says add a bit of Tabasco. Yes, I forgot to mention when I do that Vermont style wrapped in foil, I give it a shot of hot sauce. You betcha. Okay. Joseph Kukowski, he's from North Dakota. Thoughts on Canadian barbecue? Well, there are a lot of Canadians who know how to cook. A lot of Canadian barbecuers. I don't know if there's a Canadian barbecue style, but of course there's Montreal beef, which is a variation on pastrami, and it's served in a lot of the kosher delis, and I think that's a signature Canadian smoked meat. Montreal smoked meat. And if you like pastrami, and I do, by the way, I think pastrami is the ultimate expression of brisket. I like it better even than Texas brisket. And I have a recipe for it that's really good. We were, I think, the first website that really nailed good pastrami recipe. And now everybody's imitated us. You can find a bunch of good recipes out there, but ours is the best, and it always has been. I spent many hours in Katz's Deli in Manhattan, watching carefully and learning and asking questions and phoning people, and I think we've nailed pastrami to the wall. Aha! Derek Lamparty says, "Do I speak German?" He sees a German grilling book. Ein bisschen, aber nicht so gut. No, I didn't. This is the German translation of my book. It is published in Germany, and just this week, a blogger from Germany asked for permission to reprint some of my recipes on his website. So, there's Derek Lamparty saying the pastrami recipes are really great. Yeah. Kyle Lang, the snake method, am I a fan? The snake method is a technique of, one of the problems is maintaining heat. The snake method is a technique for Weber kettles or Weber Smoky Mountains round grills. Basically, well, actually, I do it on my my box grill also. Basically, it's a concept of like a fuse. You lay out your charcoal in a circle or in a U shape, and you light the coals on one end, and they burn like a fuse around in a circle or the U shape, and that helps control the temperature instead of lighting all the charcoals at once. It's a really good temperature controller, and I strongly recommend it, but there is a drawback. Cold charcoal, when it's igniting, puts out a lot of impurities in the smoke. And you can tell the difference if you've practiced tasting from charcoal that has been lit and is covered with white ash and has been burning hot for a while, and charcoal that's just igniting. So you get a better flavor of charcoal by adding fully lit hot coals to your kettle or your Weber Smoky Mountain than you do if you use the snake method. But it's really hard to tell the difference. I mean, it's a subtle flavor difference. Some people really can taste it. We talked about wine earlier. It's like corky wines. I'm hypersensitive to when the cork goes bad. I can smell it and taste it, and a lot of people go, "Oh no, the wine's great." It does put out what technically are impurities, but a lot of people can't taste it. I've been taking the questions as they come, and I want to roll back here and get questions at the beginning because I don't want to ignore people who got here early. So let's see. Okay, sounds like we're coming through good on YouTube. Okay. Okay, Ryan, I missed you, Ryan. He's commenting on the closed drawers. Where's Reese? Reese is upstairs with my wife. Yeah, Reese is the golden retriever who flunked out of guide dog school. We, as a hobby, train leader dogs for the blind, and 5 of our trainees are out there dragging blind people around. And Reese, the beautiful dumb blonde golden retriever, flunked out. They said she lacked work ethic. She's around here. She's probably crashed on my wife's floor. Okay, here we go. Josh was asking you. Josh Arison, I hope you're still with us. His brisket came out with no smoke ring. Doesn't matter. It tastes great to me. Yeah, smoke ring doesn't have any flavor. What happens is, and I've written a whole article on the chemistry of the smoke ring. Beef is red to pink in color, and that red-pink color comes from a protein called myoglobin. And when you cook meat, the myoglobin heats up and changes color. It turns tan to brown. But if you smoke meat, the smoke, there's carbon monoxide and nitric oxide in the smoke that actually fixes, it's sort of like the old days of dark, I'm an old photographer, but it fixes the color of the myoglobin so it stays pink just below the surface. Deeper inside where the gases can't penetrate, the meat turns tan to brown. But where the gases can penetrate the surface, you get this pink or ruddy smoke ring. It has no distinctive flavor, but it is something that a lot of barbecue cooks look at as a sign of true barbecue. Now, you don't get it if you don't have combustion, and you have to have combustion. And so if you're cooking, John or Josh, on a electric smoker, you're not going to get a smoke ring because there's no combustion. You get your smoke there from smoldering wood, but it's not really combusting, so the combustion gases aren't present to create a smoke ring. You can get it on propane or natural gas smoker, and in fact most of the top barbecue restaurants use natural gas. So I'm guessing if you're not getting a smoke ring, it's possibly because you're using an electric smoker. Some people have found a way around that by throwing a couple of charcoal briquettes in there near the electric coil, and they create the combustion gases. That may work for you. Okay. Wow. Teague Hosty is doing a 16-pound brisket on the pit barrel cooker. It took only 7 hours last time. Pit barrel cooker is a marvelous device, and it does cook a little faster. It cooks a little hotter. It tends to settle in around 275 or up, and that's fine for brisket. They can cook a little faster over there. Craig Strong, suggestions on smoking chicken. You know, in fact, if you're watching my advertising here, the crawl here, we've been playing lately with ebooks. We've done 2 ebooks, and we have a third one that'll be out in the next week or 2 on chicken. We talk about smoking chicken there. You can just smoke the heck out of it like you would anything else, but I don't care for over-smoked chicken. I think chicken does like smoke. Turkey likes smoke. But too much of it, I think, can be too much. I've never heard of too much smoke on a slab of ribs, or not to my taste, or pulled pork. But I think chicken and turkey can get too smoky. So I recommend you go easy on the smoke. If you're doing it on a charcoal cooker, get your wood in there 4 to 8 ounces at the start of the cook when the meat is cold, and it'll collect more. Cold meat attracts more and holds more smoke, and then just cut off the wood and cook it to 160, and you'll be fine, and it won't be over smoked. You got to find your own level. It's like how much horseradish is to your taste, or cilantro. What are your tastes? blondes, brunettes, or redheads. You got to decide how much smoke you like. But go easy at first, because it's easy to over-smoke chicken. But, one more thing. When you're I generally recommend, as a general average for smoking, 225. It's a good number, works for most meats, except poultry. It won't crisp the skin of poultry at 225. You got to jack it up to 325 or 350 to render more fat and get crispy skin. And often, if I'm going to smoke chicken or turkey, I will smoke it, and then I'll have my gas grill, and I'll crank it up at the end, and then I'll just take that chicken and throw it on the gas grill, skin down, and on a high temperature, just to crisp that skin, because I love crispy skin. And so I will just give it a zap for 3 to 5 minutes, skin down on the gas grill, just to get that skin crispy, because it tends to be softer on a smoker. Jason Sullivan, what I think of Traeger, which one would I recommend to start with? I am not the official grill tester. We have a guy on our team, Max Good, and his full-time job, what a great job. He's got a better job than I have. His full-time job is testing grills and smokers. And he has tested it. So if you go to AmazingRibs.com and click on product reviews, you can find all the Traeger smokers he's tested. In general, I think they get very high marks from Max. Traeger had some interesting history. They were pioneers in the pellet smoker world, and then they started building them in China, and general opinion was that they weren't very well built, and they were rusting out, and so on and so on. The company got sold, and the new company came in. I'm not sure where they're being built now, but the general feeling is that they're well made, and that they're pioneered right on the cutting edge of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi to control the temperature, because it's all digital now. These pellet things are really controlled well, so they're right on the cutting edge of the technology. Very highly regarded and highly respected, and they have a couple of very reasonably priced ones. So, hey, Stephen Crass. Stephen is my barbecue merchant. Stephen works at a garden store near me, and okay. Let's working my way through the questions that came in early. A lot of people piping in that they really like those Carolina mustard sauces, or the Big Bob Gibson white sauce, and Kakalaki, which I think is another brand of the white sauces. Yeah, somebody mentioned a bourbon sauce here, Joseph Kukowski. There's a recipe on our site for a Tennessee bourbon, Jack Daniels. It's not truly bourbon, I don't think, but I use bourbon or Jack Daniels in it, and it works out. The secret to working with alcohol is you've got to cook the alcohol out. I know that's heartbreaking, but alcohol often tastes funky in a barbecue sauce or in a recipe. But it's what's in the bourbon. It's the wood flavor and the other characteristics that come from the distillation and aging that you really want. So when we do the bourbon barbecue sauce, I have you pour the bourbon into a pan and cook off the alcohol. You can lean over and just inhale it, but we're going to cook off the alcohol. You can even flame it, burn it off. But what's left is just... Well, we got a fan of Duke's Mayo. I just read a really interesting article on the history of Duke's. I know when I was first coming up in barbecue back in early 2000s, a lot of barbecue snobs sneered at Dreamland because they cooked directly and fell in love with well, first of all, I dare you to go in there when the University of Alabama football team, the original Dreamland is in Tuscaloosa, and say that's not real barbecue. I dare you. But the ribs, for example, get a little char on them, and they have almost a steak-like flavor from the way they cook them, directly over logs, directly over charcoal, and they get almost like a charred steak. It's really a nice flavor. It's different than your typical southern barbecue, and I really like it a lot. And their sauce is unique too. They've been around for 100 years, and they really are good. A lot of fun too. I hate to admit it since I'm a Gator. Hey, football. SEC football starts this weekend. Looking forward to it. My Gators are looking pretty good. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed, see how they turn out. Now, I know what that's going to do. All of a sudden, all you damn Bulldogs and Alabama fans are going to start taunting me. Mike Lacherit. Mike, I've known you for several years now, and I still am not sure how to pronounce your last name. Mike is a superstar in the sous vide world, and he actually runs the International Sous Vide Association and their annual conference, which I was honored to be a speaker at this year. He is, he's not your normal backyard barbecue guy. This guy is a first-rate cook, and one of his favorite sauces is a fig port barbecue sauce. Fig working really well with smoky flavors. Yeah, I've had fig with a stuffed pork loin and a couple other things. They're really good. Fig is a good flavor for barbecue, and you can have a lot of fun improvising. I mean, if I was going to give you a generic barbecue sauce recipe, you want something sweet, you want something tart, you want something hot, you want something spicy. So you start with that general attitude and start fiddling. So, you might go for the ketchup or the tomato paste, but then again, you might go for tamarind or fig jam. And you might go for bacon, and you might go for port wine. You might go for, vinegar is common, but it's usually distilled vinegar. You might go for, hey, I just recently bought some orange citrus vinegar. Wow, is that good stuff? So you play, you experiment. And you create your own sauces. Start small. Just make a small batch. Keep experimenting. If it's too tart, add a little something sweet to balance it. And fiddle with it. The other option, of course, is to buy a generic barbecue sauce and doctor it. Okay, I like Sweet Baby Ray, but I want it sweeter, or I want it more smoky. Don't be afraid of liquid smoke. I know there's a lot of barbecue snobs out there who look down their noses at liquid smoke. Liquid smoke is just smoke that hits a cold surface, condenses, and is collected. It's the same technique that you make bourbon with. So if you don't like liquid smoke, put down that bourbon. Put down that bourbon and walk away. Turn into a wine drinker, because liquid smoke is made the same way most whiskeys are made. So, it's not quite the same flavor. I agree. But it does have a nice flavor, and almost every commercial barbecue sauce has it in it. My sauce recipes do not, but I often will say, if you want to add liquid smoke, here's how. because it just doesn't taste like barbecue sauce to a lot of people without the liquid smoke. Jeff Nelson says he loves my recipe for pastrami. Thank you, Jeff. It really works. It's a little work, but you can handle it. And it's worth it. Oh God, it's worth it. You do my pastrami recipe, and now there are two ways to do it. You can start with a piece of beef brisket, then you cure it, and curing is a special technique that involves pink salt, and I have the whole procedure there. It takes time, but it really produces a great corned beef. Once you've got the great corned beef, then you got to soak it for a little bit, and then you put the right rub on it, and then you smoke it, and you convert it to pastrami. But you can cheat. You can go out and buy corned beef. The problem is a lot of the corned beef, especially the stuff sold around St. Patrick's Day, is really crappy. So if you're going to buy a corned beef, make sure you get a good one. And to do that, I'd recommend you try to find a standalone butcher store. Not your normal everyday grocery store that caters to everybody under the sun, because they're going to go for the cheapest corned beef they can buy. But your neighborhood butcher shop, and there are a few left, meat specialty stores, you may have to drive 30 minutes to get there. They carry real corned beef and or good corned beef. Okay, Alex C., good question. On bark and dehydration. To maximize bark, you shouldn't spritz. Okay, spritzing is a really interesting issue. When you spritz meat as it cooks, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to cool the meat off. Because as that moisture evaporates, it cools it off. It's like sweat. So it cools the meat down. Well, that's good and bad. What it does is now it slows the cooking. Well, we like low and slow because low and slow helps render fat and break down the connective tissues into gelatin. So spritzing or mopping or basting slows the cook and helps tenderize the meat. It can add a little bit of flavor. A lot of people like, I'm going to spritz with apple juice, 2 parts, 1 part bourbon. It doesn't make a big difference in flavor. Just water, it has pretty much the same effect. If you really want to put flavor on something, get the rub out. That's concentrated flavor. You're not going to have a lot of flavor in apple juice. You're talking about parts per million. But it does cool it down. Now, it also softens the bark. And that can be good because if you allow the bark to form early in the cook, then you could end up with a really thick, tough bark. Remember, bark is... let's go way back. Many of you probably have experienced what's called the stall. And Professor Blonder, who works with us, a food scientist, is the guy who first figured out what causes the stall. And the stall is, let's say you take a 5-pound pork butt, right? You got a 5-pound pork butt, and you put your spice rub all over it, and you pop it in the smoker at 225, and you stick a thermometer in the center, and you cook it. And it motors along, slowly going up in temperature, because that's a big glob of thermal mass, and it comes out of the fridge at 38 degrees, and it takes a long time to heat up. And it finally gets up to around 150, 160, and it stops. What's happening is at 225, the moisture evaporating from the surface is cooling it off at the same rate that the warm air is heating it up. So you reach stasis, you reach an equilibrium. You reach a point where the cooling process is equal to the heating process, and the internal temperature doesn't go up. Because the internal temperature can't go up until the outside of the meat heats up. When the outside of the meat gets hot, the inside of the meat gets hot. It's the hot air cooks the outside of the meat. The outside of the meat cooks the inside of the meat. It's conduction from the outside of the meat pushing the heat down towards the center. So when the outside of the meat stops heating up, the inside of the meat stops. and you hit a place called the stall. And it can stick there for hours until the outside of the meat dries out, until the moisture goes away. And then when the moisture goes away, it stops cooling and it starts heating and it takes off again. And it slowly ramps up. And if your target is around 200, 203, you'll get there eventually. But meanwhile, if you're not experienced, you freak out. You know, your spouse is in the house saying, the company's here, the veggies are done, and where's your damn meat? Well, it's stuck at 150. And the way you get around it is you wrap it in foil, the Texas crutch. And you crimp that foil very tight so it can't evaporate. If it evaporates, it's going to cool. And when you do that, it stops evaporating, stops cooling. The moisture is trapped inside, and it will continue to rise in temperature. So the crutch not only captures moisture and helps speed the cooking, but it breaks through the stall. Now, you can also break through the stall by cooking at a higher temperature, so that when it gets to the point where the heating and the cooling are just about in equilibrium, the heat overpowers the cooling. So at 300, 325, it blasts through the stall fairly quickly. But usually you like to keep the temperature down. At high temperature, proteins shrink and they get tight and the meat gets tough. So you like to keep the temperature down and you're going to hit the stall. So you either just gut it out and it extends your cook, or you wrap it in foil. Now, spritzing is going to extend the stall. You're moistening the surface. So now you're wetting the surface, you're continuing the cooling process. So your stall is going to be longer. The cook is going to take much longer. As I said earlier, you have two benefits to that. It takes it longer, so that also gives the meat time to tenderize. But you're not going to get a bark, not as good a bark. So you want to play with it, and this is your individual preference. You can spritz a little and then stop and and build your bark, or not spritz at all and build your bark, and you'll have a really thick bark. And then you have the other quiver in your, the other arrow in your quiver, and that is the Texas crutch, wrapping it in foil. So you can play with all of those variables. And I say spritzing, but mopping is the same effect. Basting, it's all the same thing. Moisturizing. So you need to fiddle and figure out what works best for you. Now you are adding the variable of the stall, and you can't control the stall. It controls you. You don't know how long it's going to take. So if you're on a schedule and you got guests coming over, you want to start way early. Heck, if you get done cooking early, you just wrap it in foil, put it in a beer cooler, wrap it in a blanket, put it in a beer cooler, and just let it sit there. And I call that holding. It's not resting, it's holding. Different. I'll talk about that either later or some other time. But that's the deal there. Okay? Now, I know somebody's going to ask me about wrapping in butcher paper. A lot of Texas barbecue joints don't wrap in foil, they wrap in butcher paper. And some people think that makes a huge difference. Let me put it to you this way. Aaron Franklin, the revered Hall of Famer Aaron Franklin, wraps in butcher paper and swears by it. Tootsie Tomeretz, the revered Hall of Famer from Snow's Barbecue, wraps in foil. Who's right? There's a lot to talk about there. Jean-Marc Demare asking what temperature do I pull beef ribs? Yeah, I treat it same as beef brisket, in the 200 to 205 range, 203. Yep. Well, talking about plate ribs or side ribs, not back ribs. Back ribs, there's very little meat on them. It's only between the bones, not on top of the bones. Side ribs or plate ribs, you've got a lot of meat on top of the bones. Back ribs, I'll pull a little earlier, 190 or so. Kevin makes an interesting point. I don't know what the point is. If you could taste carbon monoxide, people wouldn't die from carbon monoxide poisoning. Probably true. What's that got to do with anything? I don't know. Yeah, Kevin Holmes Liddell says curing salts, which are sodium nitrite, can create an artificial smoke ring. Curing salts turn meat pink. That's why corned beef is pink. That's why hot dogs are pink. That's why bacon is pink, and so on. I see Bobby Granatier agrees on chicken. Likes to grill hot and fast with a little smoke. Yeah, and I do most of my chicken. Actually, I don't do them hot and fast necessarily. I want to cook it slow at first, just to keep it tender. I don't want it to get tight, and then I'll finish it hot and fast with the skin down to get that crispy surface. Reverse sear, classic reverse sear. What about duck? Oh, yeah, what about duck? Good God, Eric, I could talk for 2 hours about duck. I absolutely adore duck. It's duck breast is one of my favorite meats. That is just a whole world of discussion. Let's see if maybe there's a little time at the end here we can dive into duck. But really, that's like an hour, because there's duck breast, and then there's duck legs, which is might as well be another animal. And then there's duck skin and duck fat, which are all important products in the process. So we'll get there. Bobby Granatier, thoughts on filling a whole turkey with fruit on the smoker? Don't stuff turkey. Don't stuff turkey. The process of cooking is warm air heats the outside of the meat. The outside of the meat builds up energy, and the energy works its way to the center. So by the time the center is at a safe temperature, the outside of the meat is overcooked. So the thicker the meat, the more likely the exterior is going to be overcooked. If you stuff a turkey, you have just created a bowling ball. And to get the center and the stuffing, that fruit has to be cooked to 165 degrees to make it safe. And you don't want to screw around with the temperature of turkey and chicken. 160 to 165. By the time you get there, the exterior is overcooked and dry. Always butterfly your turkey or break it into parts. That way you can get the inside, the cavity, brown. Same thing with chicken. Brown is beautiful. Brown is the Maillard reaction. Brown is a chemical reaction that changes the color of meat, makes it more flavorful. If you cook a bird whole, the interior stays tan. And the outside, you get crispy skin, but the outside tends to dry out and get overcooked, waiting for the inside to get safe. So I'm not a fan of cooking whole birds, and I'm absolutely opposed to stuffing them. I think it's a recipe for overcooking. I say opposed. I sound like it's a political issue, you know. I think there are better techniques. Yes, Traeger is now in Utah. Did I say it was somewhere else? Craig Dashiel, when cooking on an offset, can you burn too clean a fire and lose flavor? No, I don't think so. I don't think there's such a thing as too clean a flavor, a fire. This is another very complex subject. What is a clean fire? By the way, Craig, if you happen to be a member of our Pitmaster Club, I do one of these once a month for our Pitmaster Club. It's on the first Thursday of the month, next Thursday, but it's just for our members. And we have a panel, Ben Lang from Lang Cookers. They're the smokers that are being used on this new competition on Netflix. And we have Bill Carew from the Bbq, which I think is the best log burner in the world. And we have a panel on cooking with logs. And that's a week from tonight for members only. Now, if you're not a member, you can take our 30-day free trial and you can attend. But clean fire. Okay. A common question I get is, I got a gas grill. I like to get smoke flavor. So I throw wood chips on the fire and they burn up really fast. So I wrap them in aluminum foil and I poke holes in it and they smolder. Trying to distill this down to the essence. Black smoke is bad. It tastes awful. You don't want black smoke anywhere near food. Brown smoke is just about as bad. Yellow smoke is just about as bad. White smoke is good, but it's not as good as blue smoke. Blue smoke is when it's practically invisible. The particles that come off of the combustion are so small that they don't refract light. White smoke reflects light. Black smoke, they're big particles. So you go from black to brown to tan to yellow to blue. And that's your progression, blue being your best smoke. And it's your cleanest smoke. And the clean smoke comes when there is active combustion. Flame. So if you're throwing those wood chips on your gas grill and they burst into flame, that's good, not bad. People say, oh, they catch on fire. Good. Let them burn. They will burn up fast. You'll use more wood, but you'll get a cleaner smoke flavor. And this goes back to the question we had earlier about charcoal, the snake method. When charcoal is fully lit and it's burning hot and it's covered in ash, it doesn't produce much smoke at all. But when charcoal is first igniting and it's cold, it can produce a lot of smoke. And that smoke is white billowing smoke, and it has a lot of impurities in it. And it has a nice flavor, but it's not as good as blue smoke, which has no flavor, which has no color. And so if you're burning charcoal, this is a good rule of thumb. Charcoal is for heat. Wood is for flavor. You don't want to get smoke from your charcoal. You want smoke from wood. Wood is good tasting smoke, and you want that wood to burn. You want that wood to have flames. Yellow flames are combusting the impurities. Now, the same thing goes for a log burner. You want flame. You want to combust those impurities, but every now and then you got to throw a log on, and it's going to catch on and it's going to smolder. So it's a tricky process. Cooking with logs is really tricky. It's a craft. It's an art. All right, well, here's a related question. Kevin is asking, do you think smoke tubes produce good smoke? They produce smoldering wood smoke, white billowy smoke, which is good. Not great, not as good as blue smoke, but it's good. There are times when you need white smoke, when you need fish. Fish cooks fast. Steak, you're going to cook a steak fairly quickly. So you need a lot of puffed smoke. For long, low, and slow, no, you don't need it. Okay. Josh Aronson again. I buy sushi grade salmon and on a cold day smoke it when it's 40 degrees out. Will I instantly drop dead? No, you're not. A lot of people cold smoke. It's just high risk. It's risky. I mean, the riskiest thing you do is get behind the wheel of your car. I mean, that's pretty risky stuff. We kill 30,000 people a year behind the wheel of your car. But cold smoking is riskier than hot smoking. Bacteria grow at temperatures under 160 degrees or so. So if you're cooking at a cold temperature and your food is in that danger zone, there is a risk. Now, I know your grandpa and your great-grandpa all came from Poland, and they went out back, and they didn't have digital meat thermometers, and they cooked their salmon, and they cooked their raccoon, and they made sausage, and They did it, and they didn't die. But then again, maybe some of them did. We don't know about life expectancy, and people all of a sudden drop dead from the grip. What the hell's the grip? We don't know. It's higher risk. I've written about this. Go to our website and look up my article on cold smoking. I recommend there are certain temperatures you work within and that you have good thermometers. Fritz Peters is looking for a good recipe for Brunswick stew. No, I don't have one. I've been working on one. I just haven't finished it yet. Oh, there's Mike. La Charty. Haha. La Charty. Okay. I'm memorizing Mike's last name because Mike and I are buds. And I don't know how to pronounce his last name. So the I is silent. La Charty. Thank you, Mike. Mike's a very cool guy. If you're into sous vide, go to ISVA, the International Sous Vide Association. Go to their website. The best sous vide cooks in the world hang out there. Melanie is telling us about how she does turkey. Melanie, that sounds like a good technique. May I encourage you to go look at my recipe for turkey. It's really cool, and it involves catching the drippings and making a stock underneath the bird, and that becomes your gravy. But it is a spatchcock technique, and but the secret is what happens under the bird, and it's really cool. And she says she's hearing popping like a leaking sink. Now, I'm working with a new, it's the same microphone I've had, but I've got it on one of these bracket things with a pop guard, and I'm trying to get good at this technique for you guys, and try not to smash my fingers in this damn thing. So, is anybody hearing problems with my audio? If you're hearing audio problems, I'd like to know. Oh, Brian is hearing the popping also. Oh, wait a minute. I've been hearing a popping noise too. There it is. What the hell is that? Oh, wait a minute. I think I may have just found it. The comedian Terry Thomas used to do. And tonight we have a little Chateauneuf du Pape. That popping was my Bose radio, and I have my speakers. That's my speakers. And I hadn't turned it off. I think that was my Bose radio popping. That's my speaker. I turned it on when I played my theme song because I didn't know whether it came through the... Never mind. Tips on smoking ribs on a gas grill using grill grates. You can smoke ribs beautifully on a gas grill. You have to do 2 zones. They have to go on the indirect side. And I love me my grill grates, but they have no effect on ribs. That's a whole nother story. The grill grates is a particular brand of grill grate. There's a whole bunch. Oh boy, we ducks, grill grates. I can talk about either one for hours. Maybe I come back to that. But you don't need grill grates to cook ribs. When you do ribs, you're roasting them with low, slow convection airflow. And grill grates, their specialty is when you have high temperature underneath, they even out the temperature. And they make great grill marks if you want grill marks. But you're not cooking with high heat. When you're cooking with low heat, you really don't need grill grates. There are different kinds of heat, and we should talk about it as energy. We shouldn't talk about it as heat. We should talk about it as energy. There's Convection, if you divide your grill in two parts, hot side, all the energy on this side, your gas grill has got your flame over here, your burners here, no burners over here. On a charcoal grill, all your charcoal over here, no charcoal over here. Most of your cooking is done on the indirect side, away from the charcoal. It's in convection airflow. It's gently roasting with warm air. It's not got any energy underneath it. That's where you're going to do your ribs, your pulled pork, reverse sear. Then you're going to sear on the hot side. Those coals or those burners for producing infrared radiation. Infrared radiation is much more intense than convection air. And grill grates are really good when you're working with infrared radiation. They have no effect on convection air. And in fact, they could even interfere with the airflow. So I would get them out of there when you're doing ribs. Yeah, okay, I think the popping's gone now, isn't it? Tim Hausler says we both know Dave Raymond, who will tell you to make his sauce your own and give it out as a gift. Dave Raymond, otherwise known as Sweet Baby Ray. Yes, we both know Dave, and he is a sweet gentleman, one of the great guys in the barbecue world. And Sweet Baby Ray, yeah, just take his sauce, pour it in a jelly jar, and give it out. Jean-Marc Demaris says he took a curing course a few weeks ago. You need a good scale to measure nitrites, etc. Yeah, most people dry cure. I'm a wet cure guy. I'm not going to get into why. I explain it on our site. I think it's safer and more reliable. Mike Henricks is asking about butcher paper or foil. I mentioned earlier that two of the great Texas cooks, one of them, Aaron Franklin from Franklin Barbecue in the Barbecue Hall of Fame, uses butcher paper, and another one, Tootsie Tomretz, who has been called the best barbecue restaurant from Snow's. She's touted as the best by Texas Magazine. She wraps in foil. I don't think there's a heck of a big difference. I use foil. I have the pink paper right here. I just use foil mostly. Bill Paulson, when you spritz, you lower the temperature of the smoker by opening the lid. Yes, you do, but it doesn't matter. I've written about this. This is one of the myths. If you're looking, you ain't cooking. It's a myth. Yes, you've got your grill. You open it up. Warm air spills out. You lower the temperature. When you close it, guess what? Warm air builds up in a hurry. But that doesn't matter. You know why? Because the warm air cooks the outside of the meat. And only the outside of the meat. Energy builds up in the outside of the meat. The outside of the meat is what cooks the inside of the meat. And guess what? We have charts and graphs we can show you. You lift that lid and close that lid. There's a tiny effect on the temperature of the outside of the meat. The inside of the meat doesn't know. It's like if you're in the bathroom and somebody opens the front door. You don't know that the front door's been opened and closed. It just, the inside of the meat can't tell. It's the outside of the meat. It has very little effect, and the grill comes back up to temperature very quickly. There's a lot of energy under that hood. So you can open it up and you can stick it with a thermometer, and yes, cold air will come in and warm air will come out, but it's not going to slow the cooking at all. At all. Maybe a couple of minutes at most. And you can look at the charts. We've got the exterior of the meat goes, it barely notices it. The interior of the meat doesn't even fluctuate. It has no effect. It's an old myth. If you're looking, you ain't cooking. Bulldog Run, I get toughness under the bark, but it is thin and can be chewy. I'm using your dust rub. Well, not sure what the toughness is under the bark. The bark can be tough, but I don't know about under the bark. We'd have to play 20 questions like what kind of cooker are you using? What are you using for foil? What temperature are you cooking at? What meat are you talking about? Beef, pork. So really can't do analysis this way. Come to AmazingRibs.com. Ask your question in the question and answer section. At the bottom of every page, there's a comment section. And I have paid moderators. These are not just volunteers. These are experts that we pay. We will work with you, try to figure it out. Here's another question about Rathman foil or butcher paper. Okay, Joe Kokowski wants to build a self-filling water pan. You can, but you can open the lid and pour the water in. It's not a big deal. It really isn't going to make that big a difference. Do I like the spatchcock chicken? Yeah, but I tell you, when I spatchcock chicken, there's just a flab of skin that holds the leg quarter to the breast, and it often breaks. So I end up just breaking it down into parts. Breast, cut the wing off because that's going to cook fast, and the leg quarter, 6 pieces. And then I can track each piece properly. And when the breasts are ready, they come out. When the thighs are ready, they come out. So, and that's the problem with cooking whole animals, any whole animal. Chicken, turkey, goat, pig. Pig is a great example. Oh, I'm going to do a whole hog for my daughter's wedding. Okay. So, the pork shoulder you want to cook to 205. The tenderloins you want to cook to 140, 135. The loins 135 to 140. How are you going to do that? How are you going to control the temperature on these different cuts? You're going to put an ice pack on the loins and the tenderloins? Well, the loins are along the back, under the ribs. How are you going to get them chilled down? You're so much better off just butchering the hog up, smoke the shoulder, cure the ham, grill the tenderloin and the loin, cut the loin into chops, or make a crown roast, and treat them each individually, as they should be. Same thing with chicken. Bust it up. Yeah, I know it's not as festive as a whole turkey at Thanksgiving, but it tastes better. Yes, happy holiday to you, Michael Goldman. I mentioned the log burner, and I went quickly over it. It's called Bbq, K-A-R-U-B-E-C-U-E, Bbq. It is the best log burner I've ever worked with. It's an amazing engineering concept where the logs are at the top and the coals are just below, and the smoke is pulled through the coals into the cooking chamber, which burns off all the impurities. Really brilliant. I have one, and it produces nothing but spectacular food all the time. But, it needs electricity, it needs a fan. You got to sit there and feed logs to it. You got to nurse it. Oh my goodness. We have a user group for them in our Pitmaster Club. There's a very lively devotee group of Bbq users. And Bill Carew will be on our panel next Thursday. Melanie, last month I asked about smoking previously frozen cherry tomatoes. It is possible, but they are wetter, so they take longer. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me now that you mention it, Melanie. When you freeze anything like strawberries or you break down the cellular structure, and there's a lot of juice in there, a lot of liquid. It's not as good, but I bet they turned out okay. I was talking last month, and it's a recipe that's on our website, and cherry tomatoes are in season. If you're a farmer's market, go there, buy them, bring them home, get a sharp knife and stab them 4 or 5 times and throw them on your smoker at 200 to 225 and let them dehydrate down to raisins. They need to be flexible like a raisin. You will be blown away. It's like sun-dried tomatoes, only they are little, small, sweet, smoked tomato bombs, and they're awesome on a salad, in focaccia, 101 pizzas, 101 different uses for them. We throw them in tomato sauces. They're just fantastic, and you can freeze them. Okay. Tom Need is saying sous vide. Where to look again? International Sous Vide Association, ISVA. It's a hangout for serious sous vide guys. Oh, there's somebody just posted. Mike Lasharty just posted the URL. TheISVA.org. TheISVA.org. Cool place, and there's a lot of top-notch professional chefs, developers, researchers, scientists hang out there. It's pretty cool. And as you may, if anybody is paying attention to my advertisement down here, we did do a little ebook that is for sale on Amazon for $3.99 called Sous Vide Q. Made easy, and it's about sous vide and barbecue together, and grilling and smoking with sous vide for $3.99, and it's jam-packed with good info. You can go there and pick that up. The popping has stopped, I believe. Yeah, Melanie is back saying, quiet. Thank you, Melanie. Sorry if I was driving you nuts. I wasn't noticing it, but yeah, I just turned off my speakers, and I don't know why they were popping. Okay, Neil Anderson. You're saying that charcoal imparts no good smoke flavor when indirect cooking versus wood, and charcoal is good for heat only. No, I didn't say that. I don't think you understood me, but I do have a great deal of information on charcoal. Should be viewed as a heat source, just like propane or natural gas. Charcoal should be used primarily to generate heat. When you get charcoal fully lit, it should not create smoke, and you don't want smoke from charcoal. You want heat from charcoal. You want smoke from wood. Wood produces the best tasting smoke there is. You want hardwood, nutwood, or fruitwood. So you get your charcoal, you get it fully lit so that it's burning as hot as it can burn and is not producing smoke. And you've noticed this. When you start charcoal, there's just a ton of smoke flying everywhere. And when it's all fully lit, you don't see as much smoke, do you? That white smoke that you see when you light charcoal has some funny flavors in it. So use your charcoal for heat. It's a heat source. Use wood for flavor. Wood has apple wood, cherry wood, hickory wood, all have marvelous flavors. Charcoal is char. It's charcoal. It doesn't have great flavor. You don't want it. So think of charcoal as a heat source. Like when you turn on your oven, there's a heat source. Like when you turn on your gas grill. You don't want flavor from your charcoal. You want wood for your charcoal, for your flavor. Follow me? David Hunter. I knew somebody would torment me. Is my new book out yet? No. Don't ask again. I'm going through hell trying to get a book done and run a business. It's just really hard. What method gives the best sear on a steak? Massive energy. Massive energy is what you need to sear a steak. The more energy, the better. Most gas grills don't produce enough energy, but charcoal has more energy than gas. And the deeper the charcoal layers, the more energy. 1 layer of charcoal produces energy. 2 layers of charcoal produces twice as much energy. 3 layers of charcoal, 3 times as much. So if you want an unbelievable sear on a steak, you get a charcoal chimney, which is what you use to start a charcoal fire, and you sear your steak on top of that. And there's actually grill grates now made. I just got one in the mail today that you can actually put on top of a charcoal chimney. This is a technique that I invented years ago, and everybody's doing it now. And you sear your steak on top of a charcoal chimney because you got 6 layers of charcoal. It's over 1,000 degrees. That's what the steakhouses cook on. So you can use a hibachi and get 3 or 4 layers of charcoal on a hibachi. You can sear a steak better on a $30 hibachi with 4 layers of charcoal than you can on a $1,000 pellet smoker or gas grill, because they just don't have enough infrared radiation. That's what you want, infrared radiation. And you get it from packed up energy, charcoal. Yeah, several of you guys are driving me nuts talking about what you're drinking out there. Woodford Reserve. I love Woodford. As somebody just asked, we talked about it earlier. I'm drinking a Gustav Lorenz Gewürztraminer from Alsace. Ben Colino just signed up for the Pitmaster Club. Thank you. Just a little bit of a commercial here. We're a small independent website. I own it. Lock, stock, and barrel. I started it all by myself. Got no shareholders. Nobody else. Built it from scratch. Don't have the Food Network behind me. Don't have a big magazine behind me. Advertising is in the dumpster now. It has been for years, but COVID really killed it. And you can't survive on advertising on a small website. I mean, the Food Network, they can run a website because they got a big corporation on it. We run the Pitmaster Club, and it's $24 a year, and when you join the Pitmaster Club, you keep us alive. But we do more than just say thank you, you're keeping us alive. We try to give you back in return. Go to AmazingRibs.com/Pitmaster. Look at the list of benefits. We give you a lot in return for your $24. So go look at that, AmazingRibs.com/Pitmaster, and see why we have 16,500 paid members, and the renewal rate is 85%. That's like what the medical associations get. I mean, anything over 50% is considered great. So come support us. Keep us alive. Pay my bills. Believe me, I don't have a yacht. I drive a 5-year-old Subaru. Got a nice little bungalow in a suburb of Chicago. Don't plan to retire. I'm going to drop dead. You'll find me with my head on this keyboard right here. Or on my grill. Probably reverse sear myself. How do I put coffee into the smoke or the barbecue sauce? Ooh, that's an interesting question. You need to get concentrated liquid coffee. So you need to go with instant coffee. You need to get a really good. Now I don't know the different brands of instant coffee. I have a friend who came back from Greece, and he made some really good instant coffees for me, and I forget what the hell they were. But instant coffee you can dissolve in water, and you get really concentrated coffee flavor. Then chill it, or freeze it into ice cubes, and then put those ice cubes in a pan and put them on the smoker. Smoke is attracted to cold surfaces. It's a phenomenon called thermophoresis. It's the same phenomenon that when you get out of the shower and your mirror is all foggy, it's because those little tiny particles of steam are attracted to the cold surface of the mirror. Well, smoke has little tiny particles also, and they're attracted to cold surfaces of meat. You know, they tell you to take the meat out of the fridge and let it come to room temperature. Don't do it. Put cold meat on your smoker. It attracts more smoke. And make ice cubes out of concentrated coffee, and they will collect smoke. They'll melt, but you can then do what you want with them. You can cook them down, concentrate them even more, and try using that in a sauce or a marinade. Neil Anderson, good question. You're not Neil Anderson, the football player from the University of Florida, are you? No. Do you prefer sear good steaks on carbon steel, grill grate, or cast iron? My preference is infrared radiation. My preference is over coals, over charcoal with some wood in there, some smoke, because it provides some. I mean, you can get a fabulous sear on cast iron or carbon steel. I don't see a big difference between the two. Grill grates give you grill marks, and I'm not a fan of grill marks. You flip the grill grates over and you got a flat surface. That's a plancha, and now you can get an even brown surface. If you get grill marks, you've got Maillard reaction branded on portions, but you have portions that don't have Maillard reaction. I want an even Steven all over brown surface, not tan. So I want to sear, and I'll tell you, I've been searing a lot over the charcoal chimney. Man, it is fantastic. Daniel Moore, don't do that. Just don't do that. Daniel said he'd pay double for the Pitmaster Club. If I even mentioned raising the price, I think they'd lynch me. But I know this. A lot of people see it as a way to support us, and they probably would pay more. That's very kind of you, Paul. But I think we give good value. $24. We've had discussions in our staff meetings. I'm not going to raise the price, not anytime soon. What's the big difference between carbon steel and cast iron? Not a huge difference from a culinary standpoint. I mean, they're both, an iron byproduct. One is steel, one is iron. The composition of steel is different than cast iron, but they both store energy very well. They don't radiate energy very well. Aluminum radiates energy. That's why when you wrap your ribs in foil and you open the grill, you can pick up your aluminum foil because it radiates energy very quickly. Aluminum pans radiate energy very quickly. They transmit the energy. But cast iron and so they store a lot of energy. They transfer that energy. Cast iron tends to be thicker, heavier, so it stores and transfers more energy. The carbon steel is becoming really popular with chefs indoors. If you cure them properly with oil, they can be made practically non-stick. Same thing with cast iron, but they require TLC. It's you get some cheese on it and burns in. It's just really hard to get it off without. I am not as in love with my cast iron and carbon steel as I used to be. I used to be among the many hordes. It's very chic. It's very chic in the culinary circles. Oh, I love my cast iron. It was given to me by my grandmother, and I nurse it, and I've got a great surface on it, and it just requires so much care. I'll tell you, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to show you a video. Yep, I can do this. All right, stick with me. I'm going to show you a video I haven't published yet. I haven't finished it. But I'm going to show you a video, and then we'll talk about it. Stand by. I haven't finished this video. You're the first to see it. There it is. Nope, that's not it. Oh, I know where to find it. Okay, stick with me. This is cool. This is not barbecue, but this is awesome stuff. There it is. I'm getting it. I'm getting it. I'll tell you about it in a second, and then I'll show it to you. Now, how do I stand by? No, stop. Just stop. Cut it out. God damn. This technology. Okay, now I've got the video up. Now I got to figure out how to share it with you. I know there's a way. Yep, there it is. Okay. This video runs about 5 minutes. Stick with me, watch it. I think it's cool. Okay, I don't know if you can hear me. That's baking soda. That's whole cream. There's some science here. Yeah, I know there's some pauses here. I'm not done editing it. Stick with me, it's worth it. Three eggs. It's only 5 minutes. I was wrong. It's not baking soda. It's cornstarch. God, where's my head? It's cornstarch. Salt. Some thyme. Now watch the magic. This is not cast iron or carbon steel. This is a brand of enamel pan called a green pan. And it's absolutely bloody effing amazing non-stick. Get a little butter in there. Nice knob of butter. Medium heat. Doesn't take long to set. Starting to get some curds. Look how beautiful that non-stick is. Better than Teflon. Let some of that uncooked egg down in there. Now watch this. You know what's coming, kids. Look at how loose it is, huh? Not sticking. Whoop! Ha ha! 20 seconds. That is one beautiful French omelet. Now here's another way to do that. Same idea. I just forgot to put the thyme in. This works just as well. There you go. Okay. Did you guys see that video? Somebody, you know, I'm still trying to master the technology. I don't see any comments. Did you see that video? Somebody say, yes, I saw it. And then somebody tell me if you could hear my voiceover. I was talking. Oh, yeah, there he is. Cornstarch, eggs. So, okay. Well, okay, so you are seeing it. Okay. Yeah, they're brilliant in the beginning. They do fail, but all non-sticks fail. Mine last about a year or two. Depends on how quickly no, they last pretty well. And you could hear me. That's great. So, those aren't overcooked. Those are not overcooked. Those are not overcooked. They were a little runny in the center. They were very tender, and they're really custardy. The secret is the cornstarch, and I'm gonna publish a little article about it. But it's the cornstarch and the proteins and the interaction, and it's really custardy, really creamy. But we were talking about frying pans. That's what got me off on this. This particular, now, I noticed that last month Cooks Illustrated reviewed these enamel pans. These are not your normal enamel frying pans. This is a new breed of enamel frying pans, and they're really great non-stick, and they do last. We've had several that are in second or third year, but they do like Teflon. They eventually start to lose their stickiness, and they're $40 or so. So after 3 or 4 years, you replace them. But oh my God, if you love omelets, I mean that's a really good omelet. It's the best omelet I've ever made, ever tasted. They're totally fantastic. I'm going to finish the video, and I'm going to share it with the Pitmaster Club. The cornstarch, the science is really interesting. I'm digging deep on it. Cornstarch and cream, really fun stuff. Well, we're reaching the end here, and we've gone we've gone from grilling to grill grates to omelets. But I just love an omelet on Sunday. And these things, you saw how fast. That was real time. I mean, that whole video was 5 minutes from start to finish. If you make up 2 or 3 batches, it only takes like 3 or 4 minutes to cook them. So I can knock them out. And they're just a lot of fun. I think it's 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 2 or 3 tablespoons of whole cream. I've tried it with milk. I've tried it with half and half. Half and half works, but whole cream is best. You got to use real butter, but the result is just really creamy and custardy and fantastic. Oh, Michael Goldman's commenting. Yeah, this is my quarantine cut, Michael. I didn't want to go sit in the barber chair in that little tiny barber shop, so I just got my beard trimmer out and went nuts. I took it all down to bare skin too. I was a skinhead for a while. I got mine on Amazon. That frying pan, somebody's asking. It's all right. Now you got me here. Let me find my notes. I'll give you the exact name of the pan. Stand by. There it is. Pulling it up on Microsoft Word. All right, I'm gonna share what I've got on it. So here's what's happening. Eggs are about 75% water, 12% protein, and 12% fat. Cream is about 73% water, 20% fat, 4% carbs, 3% protein. Butter, 80% fat, 70% water, and a small amount of protein. Cornstarch is an emulsifier. And as it heats, its molecular chains unravel, and they form a mesh with other starch chains, and they call it starch gelatinization. And it forms a custard-like gel from the water, the fat, and the protein. Professor Blonder, the food scientist who we work with, says essentially it's an internal sauce. The recipe I use, here's the base recipe for 1 egg. I always do a 3 egg, but here's the ratios. Pencils and paper handy. For 1 egg, 1 teaspoon of cornstarch, 2 teaspoons of cream, whole cream, 1 small pinch of salt, kosher salt, and 1 teaspoon of unsalted butter. That's it. 1 egg, 1 teaspoon of cornstarch, 2 teaspoons of whole cream, a pinch of kosher salt, and a teaspoon of unsalted butter. That's the recipe, the whole recipe. I do a 3-egg omelet, and I toss in some thyme or tarragon chives. You whisk together the cornstarch and the cream. Then you whisk in the eggs and then any of the herb that you want. And then the butter in the pan. Medium-high heat. Don't get too hot. You don't want to brown the egg. And you don't have to flip it. If you like it really runny, you don't have to flip it. You can just fold it over and you'll have a really runny center. And that's that's my non-barbecue recipe of the month here. I've been working on this like every Sunday. All right, look at we're past our hour and a half designated quitting time, and I'm kind of tired today. I'm an old man, and I didn't sleep well last night. I had something on my mind. Of course, I can't remember now, but I'm gonna thank you very much for your attention, and remind you to Sign up for our email newsletter. If you don't get it already, go to AmazingRibs.com. Sign up for Smoke Signals. We don't pester you. It comes out only once a month. It announces new articles, new reviews, new products, new stuff on the website. Or come take our 30-day trial in the Pitmaster Club. Check out our new ebooks, the one on sous vide Q. Have another one on ribs, and I'm going to have one on chicken out in a week or two. It's called the Green Pan. Oh, I forgot to tell you that. Yes, it's called the Green Pan. Damn it. I was going to tell you the brand of it. That's why I pulled that stupid article up, was to get the brand name. Stand by. Open recent, the decadent omelet recipe. And, okay. It's the 8-inch Green Pan Valencia Pro. It's the 8-inch Green Pan Valencia Pro on Amazon. 8-inch Valencia Pro. That's my omelet pan. It's Green Pan Valencia Pro. Green Pan Valencia Pro. So, that's that. All right. Well, I left you with an omelet of all things, for crying out loud. Duck. Oh, duck. The gentleman asked about duck, and I didn't give him much help there. How about I devote some time in my next presentation to duck? I have a whole series of recipes I call Duckapalooza, which I've written for the next book. You could wait for the next book, which will be out in spring of 22. Then again, we might both be dead by then. I do publish this stuff early in the Pitmaster Club, but it's not ready yet. But what I do with duck, I'll give you the quick overview. Duck breast is the jewel of the duck, and you cook that medium rare. You want the medium, 140 degrees, pink, and you got to crisp the skin. You cross-hatch the skin. Hey, I just published this week a recipe for duck breast on AmazingRibs.com. It's really good with a cherry and wine sauce. It's really good. It's similar to the one in my book, but I think it's a little better. So duck breast. The leg quarter, I take the skin off and I smoke it and I shred it. The skin of the duck, I render either in the smoker or in a frying pan and make cracklings out of it. Fantastic. You save the duck fat. Duck fat is awesome. It's a wonderful fry. I mean, broccoli in duck fat, French fries in duck fat, potatoes in duck fat, fantastic. Obviously, you don't want to use it every night. It's like bacon fat, but it's just as good as bacon fat. So you've got cracklings out of the skin. You smoke the leg quarter, and then I shred it. Then I take what's left of the carcass, because there's not much meat on the carcass. After you get the breast and the leg quarters off, there's not much meat, and you've taken the skin off, and you've rendered the skin. So now you've got the fat from the skin, and you've got cracklings from the skin. There's not much meat on the carcass left. I break the carcass up, put it in a pot, and simmer it, and throw in some carrots, some celery, and I make a duck soup. And duck soup is wonderful. It's really rich, really intense. And you cook it down, and then you take the shredded smoked duck from the legs and put that in the soup. You with me? Then you take the cracklings, you serve the soup, and you sprinkle the cracklings on top. So you have crunch on top of your soup. You've got smoked, shredded duck meat in your beautiful, clarified duck soup. And then you have a grilled duck breast on the side with broccoli stir-fried in duck fat. That's my Duckapalooza. That's my favorite way to do duck. Everything used, nose to tail. But you can cut a duck in half, and I prefer to grill it or roast it, do a reverse sear on it, to smoking it, but you can smoke it. A lot of people smoke a whole duck. The problem with that is you end up, like I was saying earlier about cooking whole animals, you're in a compromise. The legs, you don't want to cook the legs to 140 like you do the breast. You don't want to cook the breast to 160 like you do the legs. So when you do a whole half a duck or a whole duck, you end up overcooking the breast. And the brisket is a jewel if it's cooked to medium rare. So I always take the breasts off. There's a lot more to duck than that. A lot more cool stuff you can do. But that's how I use the whole duck from tip to tail. Okay? All right. I didn't mean to stiff you there with the duck question. Hope you're still there. I hope you didn't give up and go home. Okay. Now I'm going to say thank you very much. Call it a night. Who's playing on Thursday Night Football tonight? Oh, go find out. I'll fall asleep in front of the TV. I'm going to wish you guys a good weekend. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. And we'll see you here, same time, same station, next month.
That's all for now, folks. Thanks for staying awake, and please visit AmazingRibs.com for the articles, recipes, and reviews mentioned in this chat with the Barbecue Whisperer and Hedonism Evangelist from AmazingRibs.com, the planet's biggest and baddest barbecue and grilling website, Meathead.
It's a game.